You know this image, right? Of course you do. It's Stonehenge. It's one of the most famous, most recognizable monuments on the entire planet. But what if I told you that the version you know, the one in all the photos, isn't how it started? The real story here isn't just about some ancient stones. It's about a massive, ambitious, and totally revolutionary redesign.
So, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the icon we all think we know, then we'll jump back in time to see what was there before the giants, then we'll get into the main event, the grand redesign itself. After that, we'll tackle the big mysteries about its purpose, and finally see how it became this true masterpiece in stone.
Right, so that classic image of Stonehenge we all have in our heads, that's not chapter 1 of its story. It's more like the spectacular grand finale of a long, evolving history.
This quote just nails it. The monument we see today is the result of a huge transformation. It was a deliberate choice by its builders to create something way more impressive than what had been there before. It wasn't static, it changed, it evolved, and it was completely redesigned.
Okay, so to really appreciate just how big a deal this redesign was, we have to understand what was there first. So let's wind the clock way back, long before those giant stones were ever hauled into place.
Yeah, forget the huge stones for a second. The original Stonehenge was actually much more modest. It was a big circular ditch and a bank, probably with a bunch of timber posts inside. Now, don't get me wrong, it was already a super important site for rituals and burials, but it just didn't have that monumental stone architecture that makes it famous today.
And this comparison really says it all, doesn't it? I mean, look at the difference. On the left, you've got the early phase, earth, wood, and those smaller bluestones that were famously brought all the way from Wales. But then look at the right. Wow, that's the leap. A planned architectural statement using these enormous local stones. This wasn't just a simple upgrade. It was a total reinvention.
And that brings us to the main event. This is the moment when the builders decided to go big, embarking on a massive construction project that would create the legendary Stonehenge that we all recognize today.
The key ingredient for this whole redesign was a brand new building material, sarsen. This stuff is an incredibly hard, durable type of local sandstone. Choosing to work with these massive boulders, some of them weighing over 40 tons, was a huge statement. The builders were basically saying, we're going to create something that will last forever.
So let's take a closer look at that incredible outer circle. They didn't just stand these sarsens up in a ring. No way. They shaped them, they put horizontal lintels on top, and get this, they carved joints into them, just like a woodworker would. You see these mortise and tenon joints? That's why archaeologists call this carpentry in stone. It's not just big, it is brilliantly engineered. Now, inside that circle, they built something even more dramatic. The trilithon. 2 massive vertical stones with a third one laid across the top. The word literally just means 3 stones, and these are the features that give Stonehenge that powerful, almost temple-like appearance.
And this just shows you how brilliant their plan was. They didn't just place these trilithons anywhere. They set up 5 of them in a distinct horseshoe shape, with the tallest, most massive one right there in the middle. This design wasn't just for looks. It created a sacred inner sanctum, a focal point that drew your attention right to the heart of the monument.
So how on earth did they do it? I mean, this was a massive undertaking. It required incredible organization. First, you have to quarry these monster stones miles away. Then, you have to transport them with nothing but sledges, rollers, and sheer human muscle. Once they're on site, they have to be carved and shaped with precision. And then finally, the unbelievable task of actually raising them into place. This was a community effort on a truly staggering scale.
Okay, so building it was an absolutely incredible achievement. But, that just leads us to the biggest question of all. Why? What was this extraordinary place even for?
This is the mystery that has fascinated people for, well, centuries. And there isn't one simple answer. Because ancient places like this rarely fit into our neat little modern boxes. The truth is probably a fascinating cocktail of a bunch of different purposes.
Honestly, it was probably all of these things at once. Think of it like a grand cathedral for an entire region, a place for huge ceremonies, a solemn memorial to revered ancestors, and a final resting place for the elite. The very act of building it was a massive display of power. And woven through all of that was this deep, deep connection to the sky. Not just a calendar, but a sacred link to the sun's journey.
And this celestial alignment is the really amazing part. The entire monument is oriented to face the rising sun on the longest day of the year, the summer solstice, and the setting sun on the shortest. Now, this wasn't about collecting scientific data. This was about connecting human life, rituals, and the cycle of the seasons to the grand cosmic order of the universe.
So when you put all of these pieces together, you really start to see it. This wasn't just another phase of construction. The grand redesign was the exact moment that Stonehenge became the legend, the masterpiece that would echo through thousands of years of history.
And that right there is the ultimate takeaway. The builders took a place that was already sacred and they elevated it into something else entirely. They used sheer willpower, unbelievable engineering skill, and a profound sense of symbolism to create a true masterpiece of design, one that has left us speechless for millennia.
This is what makes Stonehenge so special. It's not just a pile of rocks. It's sophisticated architecture, it's an incredible engineering puzzle, and it's a deeply sacred space, all fused together into one powerful, enduring statement made of stone.
It really leaves you with a final thought. The people who built this had no written language, no metal tools for this kind of work, no modern machinery. And yet, they created something that has lasted for 5,000 years. It just makes you wonder, what are we building today that will carry our story that far into the future?